evening. If you are watching me live, you are watching on November 6th, 2020, and it's election night. It is the most important election of our lives. I don't use that flippantly. I think the American citizen, the American voter is having its say-so finally. After 4 years of the Trump administration and people's reactions to it, America is finally sitting up and realizing that the only power, the biggest power that they have is to vote. And it has been an amazing night nationwide, let alone in Oregon. And we're going to be going into the full gamut of the election results here tonight. Obviously, there's national elections going on with the presidential election. Trump has won states that he's expected to win. Biden is doing very well in states that he did not expect to win, or they didn't win last year in 2016, like Arizona and like in Minnesota and in Michigan. So we'll go over some of that here in just a minute as well. Beyond the national races, of course, there's the Senate races, the opportunity for the Democrats to be able to flip the Senate from a Republican majority and to a Democratic Party majority. And it's so far, things are very tentative, of course, because it's very early on. But in Colorado, they have been successful. John Hickenlooper has defeated Cory Gardner, the sitting senator, Republican senator from Colorado. So we can safely say that's one seat that has been flipped this early on at 8 o'clock at night and on election eve. Arizona is another one that is trending towards the Democratic candidate. That would be astronaut Mark Kelly. Running against the current incumbent in Arizona, Sally McLeod, if I remember her last name was. Anywho, the point is that she is behind. And they haven't fully, there's characteristics of Arizona and Colorado that are very similar in how they have approached early voting and mail-in voting. And so they actually have their results relatively quickly at the top of the hour after the polls close. I was on the way over here, I was listening to it in Colorado, for instance. They closed the polls at 7 o'clock Mountain Time, and they had the results within an hour. It's a real statement as to the efficiency and the effectiveness of mail-in voting if done correctly and with purpose, like what we've been doing here in Oregon. In fact, it's the top of the hour right now. It's a little after the top of the hour, and I'll be able to click on the pages here at the Secretary of State's website and at the county elections website here locally, and we'll have our results for Oregon races, or at least we'll have the majority of the vote counted. So, and be able to start seeing some trends. So that's coming up here real soon as a part of our show tonight. So not only do you have those state races, the senatorial races, you have the House races. Things are going according to par there so far as the Democrats retaining the majority in the House of Representatives. No real surprises happening there. They actually might get a couple of seats. So we'll see how as it goes, as the night progresses. So let's take it down the next step. Past the federal and the state is the state races. In the state of Oregon, we've got a lot of races that are very important to the future of our country, or of our state. We have the Secretary of State's race, Shemia Fagan against Kim Thatcher, the Republican Kim Thatcher. And things are progressing pretty darn good there, I think, for the Democrat, for Shemia Fagan. And I venture to say that we'll be checking here and we'll be seeing her being successful. Also, there's the state treasurer's race, Tobias Reed against Jeff Goodman, Republican Jeff Goodman. Good men, both of them are very good men. I like Jeff a lot. I like Tobias a lot. I think the power of incumbency is going to go in Tobias's favor, and he'll retain his seat as state treasurer of Oregon. There's a couple of ballot measures that are being contested this year. The biggest one to me is the most important one to me is Measure 107, which would allow for the establishment of campaign contribution limits in Oregon, and actually changing the Constitution to codify it. So that's going to be a big one, and that's going to have long-term ramifications in the state of Oregon as far as how it's going to affect the cost of running for office. And just this cycle alone, in this general election, there was races out there, small races for state rep houses that were well and exceeding $2 million plus. I mean, just outrageous amounts of money just to get a House seat. Our guest tonight is Dacia Graber. Dacia is a candidate running for the Oregon House of Representatives to represent District 35. And that's Tigard, Metzger, parts of Southwest Portland going down. And Dacia stands a very, very good chance. I don't want to, until I can prove it by looking on the site, I don't want to jinx anything, but I think she will be coming on our show tonight as state representative-elect. And so I'm really honored and really excited to be able to talk to her. So she'll be here in the second half of the show. She'll be calling in. And so we'll talk with her and get her impressions on things. So there's that going on. There's the statewide races. And then there's the local races, the municipal races. In the municipal races, there are municipal measures. The Metro transportation tax bond measure is up. I'm knocking on wood that passes. I'm very pro the transportation, funding of full transportation, including the light rail going down into Tigard. But that's my opinion. And so there's that one. I think there is the children's levy in Clackamas County that will be devoting money to help underserved youth. That's a huge one, and we'll have those results tonight. So those are the regional ones, and then of course, on the local level, and all politics is local, of course. We have the mayor of Portland race. We have the mayor city council races in Portland. We have Lake Oswego's electing a new mayor. Lake Oswego is electing city council people, councilman persons. There is Clackamas County Commissioner race with Ken Humbertson. So we're going to be getting into that here and see what kind of results that we have. We have this new technology, you see, that allows me to be able to show you what's on my screen, so you'll be able to see some of this stuff as we see it. So let's first go to the statewide elections and kind of see what they're happening there. I mean, let's, at the Oregon Secretary of State's page, I'm just going to do a quick refresh here, and then Marv, if you can put my computer on the monitor, I'll be able to, after we refresh here, it'll show some stats, I bet you. Hopefully it will. Admittedly, they're probably putting in a whole bunch of results. So, I mean, that's one of the things about the state of Oregon that is so wonderful, is that the mail-in voting allows for this kind of more accountability, if you will, or quicker accountability. I mean, look at this right now. We're looking at a 78% statewide voter turnout. That is amazing, folks. I mean, when was the last time that we've had over 70% returns? I mean, this is far exceeding 2016. And so we're at ballots received right now at 2.3 million ballots have been received. So let's do a quick here with the federal results, for instance. Now we go into the federal results. Hopefully that'll pop up here. I don't want to be, hopefully we'll get some results here. I think I have to refresh some of the screens. But I do want to encourage you, if you're watching the show tonight, you're watching it live, it's November 6th. This is a call-in show, and I would love it if you would have to call in and share some of your comments.
Close IVGA and restart it.
Okay. Close IVGA and restart it. Okay, so what we're doing here right now, folks, is we are having to do a quick computer restart, if you will, for the being able to share the screen. And even if we're not able to share the screen, we'll be able to get the results to you. The high tech here, that's for sure. So let's go through here real quick. We're in Multnomah County. I've got the screen up for Multnomah County, and at least I'll be able to see and share with you some of the results that we have here. Okay, so Portland Mayor. We have the results for the Portland mayor's office, and Ted Wheeler is at 47%. Sarah Iannarone is at 40%, with a total of 310 votes casted. It's looking like Ted Wheeler has been reelected. It looks like Ted Wheeler has been reelected. Let's see here, Multnomah County. Let's get into some more Multnomah here, if I may. Okay, so the city of Portland here. The 26-213 was a levy to restore recreational programs, park and nature programs through a 5-year levy. That is at 64% right now approval rating.
We can bring them up on this one.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, perfect. The next one that we have for the city of Portland is there was a police, here, wait a second, folks. Looks like Mary Nolan has won her Metro Council race over Chris Smith. Looks like the Multnomah County measure is to expand the library benches has passed, 60% to 40%. Tuition-free preschool programs for Multnomah County is passing 64% to 35%. Oh my goodness. The city of Portland amending the charter to authorize a new and independent community police oversight board is passing by an astounding 82% approval. Wow. Let's see here if there's any other ones here relevant. In Portland, issuing some new bonds to repair the schools. It looks like that's passing by a 75-25%. So what I'm kind of seeing here, folks, is we're seeing a real statement from at least Portland and Multnomah County voters of they want fundamental change, and they want to support the services. They want us to support those social services that we provide, and they want more of them. They want to sustain them. As a Portlander, that just fills my heart. I think that is fantastic news to hear that, you know, we will have fully funded libraries. Even in these times, it's even more important that our libraries are fully funded. Preschool, universal preschool in the city of Portland. That's important. And that just makes for a better educated and a better community, a stronger community if we take care of our children. So, and then the police accountability, that's an indictment of the current police force, quite frankly. You know, and that's what happens when you have 100 days of protests and this hardening of opinions on everything. But that's Portland for you, you know, and I'll say this, Portland is not the rest of Oregon, that's for sure. Portland's not even Beaverton and Lake Oswego, Clackamas County by a long shot. So what happens in Portland usually kind of stays in Portland, if you will, or at least in Multnomah County. But so we'll see how it goes for the rest of the state. But if you're a Portlander right now, you've pretty much made a statement with how you have voted on some of these measures. So that's good to hear. Let's see, what else is happening here? I'm at the Washington County website right now. Oh, we have a good one here. We have Lacey Beatty won her election for mayor over Denny Doyle, the incumbent Denny Doyle. Looks like she's ahead 53 to 45 with 33,000 votes cast. I'm not sure if those are solid, but that's a great start for Lacey. Denny Doyle, as you may know, has been mayor of Beaverton for 3 or 4 terms now, and so he's very well entrenched and a good man by all sense of the word. Lacey Beatty, a city councilwoman in Beaverton, younger, ambitious, military background, smart as a whip. And now she's mayor-elect of Beaverton. So this kind of goes in alignment with my attitude that this is the year of the woman, and as well as the year of the protest vote. So this will be interesting. All right, so that's happening in the mayor's race. Let's see, one in Hillsborough I just had a personal interest in. Looks like my friend Gina Roletto is going to be a new councilwoman for the city of Hillsborough. She won her race 35%, and the second place came in at 15%. So, you know, that's another one there. And you know what I love about these smaller races, these municipal races, is the fact that the people that run, the politicians that run in these races, these smaller races, they're the real deal. They're in it for the right reasons. They're doing it not for ego, but they're doing it for values. They're doing it for bettering their community, making a better community for where they live, in which they live. And so when somebody runs for city council, when somebody runs for mayor, when somebody runs for even a water board or a parks board, and they're doing it out of love. They're doing it out of love for their community. And so win or lose, they're winners in my book. And I have a lot of respect for those that decide to throw their hat into the ring and to go through the public scrutiny of an election campaign, no matter where it's at. And you'd be surprised how rough and tumble it gets in some of these small communities. I mean, even in a town like Lake Oswego, for instance, you know, it's rough and tumble politics. There was all sorts of scuttlebutt going on in that race. And we'll hear shortly, we'll be able to share some of those results with you. So there's a lot going on, and on a national, and you know, what happens on a national basis is huge, and it makes a huge difference in the course, the direction of our country, of course, but those smaller races also make a big difference. And especially these state rep races and some of these races, these legislatures in states, with redistricting coming up and the census numbers coming in and affecting how many congressmen, the representation of that state. So by you going out there and voting and listening to these election pitches, if you will, these candidates talk and taking the time to vote for them and learn more about them and vote for them, you know, you're participating in that process. You're establishing the future for our community. And so it's very exciting to me. And I don't mean to be such a political nerd about it, but on one hand, but on the other hand, it all comes down to how we want to be as a community. You know, who we want representing us, and what their values are. So, God bless you for doing it, and all the best to you in the, you know, on how this goes. Let's see if we can find some. Oh, okay. So right now we have the national results from the presidential race here in the state of Oregon. And in Oregon, Joseph Biden is the winner, 63, almost 64% over 33% for Donald Trump. So we can put that one in the books. The U.S. Senator race here in Oregon, Jeff Merkley has handily beat the Republican Joey Perkins, 64% to 33%. So Jeff Merkley will be continue to be our senator, has been reelected as senator from the state of Oregon. Suzanne Bonamici, looks like she has won her race at a 70% reelection rate over the Republican Christopher Christensen, who, in my opinion, had the most creative political lawn sign I have ever seen. Let me tell you the story. I don't know if you've seen it out there or not, but it's a cowboy boot. It's a cowboy boot saying "Vote for Christensen," and it's a die-cut cowboy boot. You can't miss it. I have no idea the relevance of a cowboy boot in relation to a congressional race, but it makes for a very cool lawn sign. So I tip of the hat to Mr. Christensen, and a congratulations to Suzanne Bonamici for securing her reelection. Let's see what else is going on. In the 2nd District, Cliff Bentz, who is the Republican that is replacing Greg Walden. Cliff Bentz is a former state representative. I think he was Speaker of the House, or at least in leadership there for a while. So it's unsurprising that he's won at 58%. And the Democrat there, Alex Spencer, good man, but boy, just overmatched in that district at 38%. Earl Blumenauer is winning handily at 76%. His opponent, the Republican Joanna Harbor, is at 20%, almost 21%. So once again, you know, the incumbents are winning, at least here in Oregon, most of the incumbents. And that the second district one, that Cliff Bent's race, it's been expected that the Republican would win that race. So that's going good. I have some fantastic news to hear about the 4th district. There's been a lot of concern about Peter DeFazio retaining his seat because he had a really strong challenge coming in from Alex Skarlatos. Alex Skarlatos, his past history, I guess he was a Medal of Honor winner, and he was actually in a movie, and he kind of rode that military history, wrote it hard through this election as a Republican, though. But it's tough to be a Republican, especially one that has kind of been as two-faced as Alex has been. In Lane County, in that district, in 4th district, the registration edge is just powerful down there for the Dems. Although the Republicans have started to even it out a little bit, there was some real concerns. So we're at 57%, 58% for Peter DeFazio. We're at 40% for Alex Skarlato. So that is fantastic news. I'm glad to hear that. Kurt Schrader has won re-election at 58% over Amy Ryan Corser, the Republican out there in the 5th district, out Clackamas County and past that, down into Marion County. I actually met Amy Ryan Corser. She was waving signs. You know, she was out there. She was trying her darndest to make sure that people knew what was going on about her race. And so I give her a tip of the hat to that, for sure. But Kurt Schrader, it looks like, has won his race. And so on a statewide level, it looks like our representation on a federal level is unchanged, except for Mr. Bent's winning, Congressman-elect Bent's winning in the 2nd district, so they'll retain that. Keep in mind, too, that next year with the whole redistricting and the census numbers, redistricting starts next year. And so there is the very real possibility that Oregon receives a 6th congressional seat. And so it will be very interesting to see how the congressional lines are redrawn to accommodate this new seat and where that new seat will be located. Will it be located within the metro area? Will it be down further? Yeah, so there's going to be some movement over the next few years as far as our congressional representation due to the census. And that's going to happen in a lot of states, that's for sure. So there's that going on. I'm very interested in what's going on in Clackamas County here. Let me see if I can pull up the Clackamas County results. It's the one area we haven't hit yet. I do know that the Secretary of, or the county clerk reported that they had a computer crash in Clackamas County, preventing them from adding in the numbers of some of today's results, the votes that were brought in today and replaced today. They had been tabulating the mail-in votes until this had happened. They are saying that they will have it back up, and this is delaying the final results from Clackamas County by a good 10 to 12 hours. So there may be some challenges from Clackamas County. No shenanigans. It's not no interference or anything like that. What it is just a, and we'll just have to take her, the county clerk's word for it that everything is on the up and up, and I'm sure it is. So we have to figure out what's going on there. Let's get back to the national races here for a second. Biden seems to be doing very good. He's got the West Coast, he's got Colorado, New Mexico, he's probably going to be getting Arizona, he's got the Eastern Seaboard that people have been expecting him to have. You have that red, you do have that red pathway, though, that Trump has been riding all the way through the South, going up into the Midwest. That's just been acknowledged that, that's prime Trump territory, if you will. So I'm not surprised about that. What it does boil down to, though, is the Electoral College and which states are the ones that win. And so the biggest ones are Ohio, the Pennsylvanias, the Texases, the Michigans, and that's where most of the effort, the Floridas, and that's where most of the effort of the presidential campaigns have been to, well, in essence, to compensate for the mistakes of 2016. They've been not overcompensating, but they've been paying a lot more attention to those contested battle states. And both Trump and Biden, but especially Biden. And the biggest challenge, I think, too, is on this national race is just the COVID situation. You have Joe Biden that is doing his best to represent a responsible approach to the pandemic. Wear your mask, social distance, don't do these super spreader events like Trump is doing. And Trump has been doing the absolute complete opposite in rallying his troops. It's kind of a risk factor that he doesn't care about. He's been blatant about it. And we saw the effect of that at that super spreader event that he had when he did the nomination of the Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett, with 45 plus people catching COVID at that one event, attributable to that one event. So, and they've even been saying that, I read something just earlier about how thousands of cases or hundreds of cases can be directly attributed to these Trump rallies that he's been having over the past few weeks. So I tell you, it's going to be interesting. I do not understand. It's hard for me to understand, to wrap my arms around how someone can feel so fearful of our future to start embracing, to just fully embrace the Trump philosophy or the Trump approach. Although it was interesting, I did read something earlier tonight that was given to me that kind of did give me some insight. And it was about Trump and how he has played into the fear factor, the fear of change factor that many conservatives have. I mean, that's their namesake. As conservatives, they have this fundamental fear of change. And I've heard this been reported before as far as how people, you talk to somebody that is a Trump supporter and you point out to them the flaws in their argument or the flaws with Trump or the things that he's been doing that, and they don't care. It doesn't matter to them. It's a cult of personality. But it's also beyond that cult of personality. I think it's even deeper than that, and it's that fundamental fear of change. And how Trump has played into that masterfully, if you want to look at it that way, to get people to so it's amazing, isn't it? It smacks of 1984. Don't believe what your eyes see, only what you hear and what we tell you. It just smacks of 1984, doesn't it? And it's right there along with the playbook of Mein Kampf, guys. You know how to do it, and Trump has been following the plan, the playbook very efficiently, and so here we are. Here we are, and I still feel, though, even with all of that challenge, I still feel that we are at the beginning of what I would call an American reclamation. The American Reclamation. This happened in the 30s, after years of abuse and people, the businesses and corporations and special interests taking advantage of it, that culminated in the Great Depression. It took that to awaken the American public as to the need for thinking about us as a group community versus the individual, And so that's when those social programs, that's when Franklin Delano Roosevelt began his first term. Did you know that when he had his first term, he also had majorities? He didn't have he had majorities in the House and in the Senate, just similar to like what we had in the first 2 years in 2008 with Obama and what we potentially will have with Biden here in 2 years. He had actually 4 years, two congressional congresses to implement the New Deal, the FDR New Deal. And so Biden, when he gets in, And if the trends continue here, and then we flip the Senate and we retain the House and we get the presidency into Biden wins the presidency, you're going to see an amazing amount of legislation and policy be coming out of Washington, D.C., out of Congress. And because it'll be their golden opportunity to establish what that reclamation will be looking like and what it'll be a part of and what we'll be doing, you know? So we'll have some coalition we'll have that coming behind us. So please keep faith, take faith in that, and take hope in that, and we will persevere. And no matter what happens tonight. Now, I notice that we're getting close to the bottom of the hour, and I think my guest may have just called in. So hey, let me see if this is her. Hi, good evening, welcome.
Hi, Moses, how are you?
Wonderful, Dacia. I want to thank you. I want to, if I may, just introduce you to my audience here. Everyone, I'd like to introduce Dacia Graber. She is
actually, it's a hard name to pronounce.
Did I pronounce it correctly? Dacia?
Oh, it's Dacia.
Dacia. Oh, did I put the info?
Yeah. That's okay. Everybody does that.
I thought I was being so on the ball. I thought I had it down. Dacia. Pardon me.
Dacia, yes. Yeah, no problem.
Well, I have not been able to check because I've been online. Did you win your race?
I think as of right now, Moses, you can pretty confidently call me Representative-elect Dacia Graber.
Dacia, that's wonderful. That is
yes,
wonderful.
The initial results came in, put me at about 70% of the vote.
That is fantastic news. Well, I'll have to admit we had a little discussion here at the TV show whether or not we should use representative-elect or not, whether we should be that presumptuous without knowing the results first. So that's good to hear.
I think that, yes, I think with that, and that was with 30,000 reporting, so that's a pretty good statistical margin, I would say.
That's fantastic. I know that this is...
Very excited.
I know that this is just happening, I mean, within the last 30 minutes or so. How do you feel?
I feel, a little surreal right now, to be honest. I'm sitting in my dining room, and we've had the TV on and OPV on, and we've got two computers going here watching state races and national races, and it's an incredible moment in time to be a candidate. It's an incredible moment in time to win an election at a time like this. It's a mandate for sure of what's to come. And as I watch the results come in from around the country, I realize how important this is going to be, that we, take Joe Biden's language of build back better, and we work to forge bonds and try to bring voters back together, bring each other back to this sense of community.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. Before you came on, I was kind of talking about that difference between individualism and group community. And I really feel that we've lost a little bit of that sense of citizenry, of group, of community, of being a citizen, and individualism has kind of taken over or exerted itself, if you will. And to hear you remind us that Biden is emphasizing that community, that need for civic involvement, that need for us being good citizens is very encouraging. How is that going to be interpreted into when you get into the legislature? How will that affect policy?
I think, we're going to be walking a fine line here. Obviously, Oregon appears to continue the trend that we have a Democratic wave continuing. I'm sorry, my kids are being really noisy in the background. And I think it's going to be finding a way to keep progressive voices moving forward. I think there's a way to be progressive, push progressive policy, and do better with building coalitions based on hope and not fear. And that's really where I see that return happening. We've all been given this incredible hurdle, and it's been so tough the last year with COVID-19 and with economic instability and wildfires and now the election and racial justice. We've been given all these, and this is an opportunity to bring our progressive voices and build the future that we are hoping for.
Yeah.
I think that we need to work. There's a difference between working across the aisle and talking across the aisle and having conversations. And I think if we can have those conversations and show people the way to be progressive and how that benefits all, I think we need to do a better job in this state of kind of highlighting how corporations control a lot of our elections, how they control a lot of our policy that we pass in Oregon. And, we allow those corporate dollars oftentimes to divide us into DNR. And I think that at the end of the day, there still are more threads that unite us than divide us.
Agreed. I remember reading about the effect of campaign money on, like, for instance, within the timber industry and how it affected some of the policies. And I'll have to admit that really hurt my heart a little bit, because it went against almost these fundamental principles of being an Oregonian, this respect for our nature. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that I agree with you, and it's sorely needed. And I think I like the word that you used, the mandate word, because I think I agree with you also there. I think we're seeing this not just in Oregon but nationwide. Yeah,
I mean, we have a mandate to reclaim our shared humanity. At the same time, we have these challenges, right? We have the veil of folks who ascribe to principles of white supremacy, who are bigots, who are xenophobic. Those have been pulled back, and we have to. And I don't know what the answer is to moving past that. I think that we put our effort into folks that are in the middle ground, that feel disenfranchised, that don't understand how racial justice is actually for everyone. It's not just for a segment of the population. How when we lift one, we lift all. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think we have to be fearless about calling out corruption and racism and white supremacy where it exists. We have to demand more of our elected officials. We have to demand more of the folks that are tasked with keeping us ostensibly safe. We have to do things like when you talk about the timber money, there's this fallacy that so much of that is coming from inside the state. There is a lot of it, but so much of this is corporate controlled from outside of the state. There are bigger interests that are playing us against each other in issues like that, and we have to go into this eyes wide open.
Mm-hmm. What do you have a particular issue that you've embraced that you plan to champion when you're down there in the legislature?
I do. My core, my background, I am a career firefighter for folks that don't know, and a proud union member. And I'm also the chair of our Equity and Inclusion Committee in our union. And I feel that, especially with COVID-19, looking out for working families, making sure we have policies to keep our frontline workers safe is foremost in the lens that I look at problems through. At the same time, COVID-19 has changed everything, right? We had a decent budget forecast, but I think that when rents are due and when folks aren't able to pay those, we're going to see that change. So as we move into winter, as we move into, whatever destabilization comes out of this election, we have to make sure that people have access to housing and to health care and to basic human needs. And I do think that is going to have to be a bipartisan team effort.
Yeah, I hate to sound cynical. Do you feel that, what will it take to bring everybody to the table?
I think elevating the voices of folks who are the most affected. I think that's one of the reasons I ran for office. We have a lot of folks, and certainly not everyone. I think there's people who are very tapped into the human condition, if you will, but there's a lot of folks that are disconnected with poverty, with what folks are experiencing with job loss, with healthcare loss. You know, when you have people deciding whether they're going to, you know, buy their medicine for cancer or feed their children, we have a gross inequity that needs to be addressed. And I see it part of as my mandate to make sure that those voices are amplified and brought forward to the legislature, that they no longer remain unseen or unheard.
Do you think the time, I know that the time is right in the sense that we're at this heightened awareness of the inequities, and we're at this social tipping point where people have begun to recognize the inequities and want to do something about it. But then you have this obstinance in the political level, you know, and that's always such a challenge to break through.
Mm-hmm. I do think that.
Yeah.
You know, part of what I will bring as a legislator is the same thing I have brought as an activist and a community advocate, and that is some of those frontline stories. You know, when I was advocating for paid family leave, I talked about our own family and how when my husband was diagnosed with throat cancer, you know, the choices that we had to make there. And when I speak about gun violence legislation, I speak as someone who far too often in my life, in my professional life, have had my hands in the blood of someone who has been shot, who's been the victim of that. And those stories connect people to their empathy, to compassion, and to stopping othering other folks, which is what's happened, right? And it's what we do on both sides of the aisle. We create the story of the other.
Yes.
And that's our job now. That is our mandate, is to break through that and to see each other as human beings with a lens of empathy. Now, that doesn't mean that we excuse white supremacy, not at all.
Right.
It's the empathy that I think will bond people together to say, no, we've had enough of that.
You know, that makes me feel so good to hear you say that, because that's been kind of an underlying theme to all of the to much of the political activism that I have seen over the last 3.5 years since Trump won. That underlying compassion, that embracing of the other, of our differences even. I think earlier I described it as we're at the cusp of a reclamation of spirit, or an American reclamation right now. And it's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen over time if we're pointed in the right direction. And I feel like we are finally pointed in the right direction. Do you agree with that, Dacia?
I do. I'm really, I've had to check myself tonight. I thought that reclamation of spirit, and I love that term, would be more on display as national voting results come in, but we also know that we're a long way from knowing what those results are going to be until every vote is counted.
Right.
And I think that, in places where we hold these principles of equity and common good really at the forefront, like we claim to do in Oregon, we have to be the breeding ground for that. We have to be the change that we see, and we have to start empowering voices that will carry that, whether that's youth voices or folks that have historically been disenfranchised. Right. I think that's where we find the reclamation of spirit, when the most vulnerable among us, when the youngest among us are empowered. That's what's going to grow this next wave of how we move forward.
I'll have to admit I was concerned about a couple of measures passing here locally. One being the Clackamas Children's Levy, the other being the universal pre-K in Metro, in Multnomah. And before you came on the show, before you came on, you called in, I saw the results, and it looks like both of those did win. And so I see these opportunities, I see these statements by local voters of saying that, yeah, they get that, and they want to embrace that, and they're willing to put their dollars where their mouth is. And so that was encouraging, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and in line with what you're saying as far as the awakening.
Yes, absolutely. And we are so fortunate to live here in Oregon. We are so fortunate.
In more ways than one, when it comes to the pandemic, for instance, I've been so grateful that we've taken a common sense approach to this. In comparison to other states where it's been, the rugged individualistic approach, and people are dying because of that. Yeah. It's very frustrating, very frustrating. Well, I hope that the results stay the same, first off, and I'm sure they will, because... Me too. And where do you go from here? What happens? There was a wonderful line in one of the best political movies ever, The Candidate, with Robert Redford, and he has just won the Senate seat from the incumbent in an improbable win. And he pulls his consultant into a side room and he looks at him and he says, "Now what?" And then the crowd comes in and they never answer the question. So I guess I will pose that to you. Now what?
Well, for the next few days, I take a deep breath, and I love on my family a whole bunch, and I shout out a lot of gratitude where it's due, and that's to a lot of different people. And then, Moses, we get to work.
Yes.
I will be continuing to work as a firefighter right up until the session, when I will take a leave of absence. And then I will go back to being a firefighter after the session is over. But I think that now my next steps, knowing that I am the representative-elect, and it looks like I'm still over 70%, which is pretty awesome for that seat, it's time to talk to the community. It's time to bring in the folks, because I'm representing Tigard in Southwest Portland, not just the folks in the district that voted for me, but everyone. And I want to hear what is on people's minds. I've been doing that anyway, but, really get a pulse, a temperature check, get my finger on the pulse of where things are now, and see where everything lands. And I think, like you said, we need a reclamation of spirit at a national level, and it starts here, and I'm going to be part of that change, and I'm so proud to be that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, once again, I'm so grateful that you took some time out of this crazy election night for me to be able to say Representative-elect Graber.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for calling in, and all the best to you tonight.
Thank you, Moses. Have a wonderful night.
Okay, you take care.
Bye.
It's conversations like that that just fill my heart with hope when it comes to the political process, because of the sincerity of someone that is on the cusp of being able to be an elected official, to represent us, to represent their community, and they're up for the challenge, and they're ready, and Dacia is ready. And she wants to talk to them, and she wants to do some changes. She wants to make some changes in our community. So that I get goosebumps. Sorry, I'm such a political nerd, but that's truly it's beyond a candidate who runs. It's the potential of what they could do. That's what's inspiring to people about politics, is the potential of what can happen, the leadership potential, the policy potential, the lives that can be affected. I mean, I think this election, the last 3.5 years, I think has driven the whole point home about the ramifications of a vote. Oh, I think I'll just vote for Trump because, well, okay, this is what you get. Or I'm not going to vote for Hillary because I don't like her, Well, here's what you get, So that's the negative side of the coin. The positive side of the coin is what we just talked about with Dacia and the opportunity for that reclamation, the opportunity for those positive changes to actually become statewide policy and to be a reflection of who we are as a community in Oregon. In this beautiful state of Oregon, you know, it's hard for us to be able to affect things outside of our state, that's for sure. I mean, when you've got Idaho and the challenges with Idaho when it comes to the pandemic and their rugged individualistic approach, you know, overriding hard science, you know. The challenges with COVID here, at least we've been able to somewhat have respect for the situation and make sure that, you know, we keep it under control, handle it scientifically versus emotionally. So, long story short, it was wonderful to talk to Dacia tonight, and I'm so grateful that she is now going to be an elected representative. And I know that there are a lot of other folks out there that have won their races, that have interest in some of the outcomes of some of these races. And so we're going to just do a quick check here. It's 8:51. We've got about 10 minutes left in the show tonight. So let's first off double check. I want to really see what's happening with these ballot measures. Oh my goodness sakes, look at that. So in Oregon, the ballot measures, okay, and we've got it up on the screen too. We have right now the Oregon Measure 107, the campaign finance reform, is at 76.8% yes, which, and quick story, me and some friends that were involved in the campaign finance reform measure, we were placing informal, you know, just good-natured bets on what kind of a win percentage. I did 83%, and it's at 76%. So maybe I was a little bit too optimistic on how many people would embrace it and vote yes for it. But still, 76 is a mandate, darn it. That's pretty good. That was like, she got 70%. Dacia got 70% approval on votes for her, you know, so 70%, that's a mandate. The tobacco and nicotine tax, Oregon Measure 108, is passing by 66%. So if you're a smoker, expect to be paying a couple bucks more a pack, and you know what? That money's going to be spent to pay for your damn health care. So when we have to deal with your cancer, so tough luck. Sorry, hard to have too much empathy for that tax. I think we should have done that years ago. And Oregon had one of the lowest cigarette taxes in the nation. I think it was only one of 3 that had that were that low, and now this gets us up to New Jersey levels. I think it's like $2.50 a pack tax. And it does have the desired effect of reducing smoking, especially with younger people who are not of age, who get enamored by the whole thing. You know, if you can't afford a pack of smokes, you know, because of the taxes, well, tough luck. So anyhow, I'll get off my soapbox on that one. And finally, the Measure 109, legalizing psilocybin, the mushrooms, as a form of treatment for mental health. Let's make sure that's clarified. Is ahead at 56.1%. So once again, Oregon leading the way when it comes to these approaches to health and to drugs. I mean, there's also another measure in here. I have to double check as far as the reductions of the decriminalization of certain drugs, of certain amounts of drugs. I'll double check that here in a minute. I hope that did pass also, because that's one of those where, you know, why are we wasting our money on small, low-level crimes like drugs, when money should be spent and time should be spent on larger, more important social issues. You know, it's like criminalization of homelessness. You know, it's a waste of money. It's a waste of resources. You could give somebody, you know. So anyhow, that's how I feel about that, and I think that's also one of the solutions to it all when it comes to downtown Portland. But that's another issue, and that's another show that we'll talk about those sorts of things. So obviously there's some good things happening here on Election Day nationwide. You know, at least nationally, locally,
I did mention, of course, that Ted Wheeler has been reelected. So we are not going to, they did not elect Sarah Ayanaroni, I never can pronounce her name, pardon me. They did give it a good try. It looks like Tobias Reed won by 55%, 54%. Ellen Rosenblum has won by 58% against hers. Jay Inslee has won. There was actually a real concern about Governor Jay Inslee up in Washington winning his race. Lauren Culp was a Eastern Oregonian, first-time politician, started to really resonate with some of the Republicans in Washington, but he lost by 20 points. So Jay Inslee will continue to be Washington governor. Looks like the lieutenant governor's race, that was a good one. Denny Heck was a former congressman that retired from Washington, who retired and then came out of retirement to run for lieutenant governor against a gentleman who is a former senator, a sitting senator, Mark Elias, who would have been the very first openly gay man to be an elected official in Washington state. And unfortunately, that gentleman did lose. He lost to Denny Heck, 58 to 41%. So that's going on there in Washington. It looks like the Republican, Kim Wyman, is beating the Democrat for Secretary of State up there. Secretary of State is a race that usually the Republican wins. It's kind of a quirk of Washington State. Looks like the Democrat is winning in the Treasury, for the treasurer there. And it looks like there's a whole, okay, here we go. And we've got the mayor's race, Ted Wheeler, 53%, Sarah Ayanaroni at 46%. So the people have spoken, I guess, here in the city of Portland. 146,000 votes for Ted Wheeler, 126,000 for Sarah. That's amazing. And then we have the Portland City Council race, Mingus Mapps. Mingus Mapps is the newest city councilman for the city of Portland, defeating standing Commissioner Chloe Udaly, which is an interesting development. It was kind of unsurprising that she's lost. Especially with the anti-incumbency wave when it comes to the commissioners and her tendency to be very focused on rent control and those issues and equity issues. She also really rubbed neighborhood activists the wrong way. She tried to abolish the current neighborhood association system that's in Portland. So that was an issue there. So, and Mingus Mapps actually worked for her administrating some of the neighborhood associations, and he decided to run in protest and has now defeated her. So that's happened. It looks like Joe Buck is the next mayor of the city of Lake Oswego. Joe Buck has won 52%, 9,000 votes. City councilor, let's see, who do we got here for city councilor? Melissa Fireside at 19%. Rachel Verdick at 20%, Massine Baboop at 28%, Aaron Rapp at 18%, Emma Burke at 13%. Wow, that's amazing. That's 100% too. And so that's about all we have at this point. Once again, if you have run for office in this cycle or any time, and you've won or you've lost, especially if you've lost, my respect and my heart goes out to you, because you have put yourself out there for the world and to judge, and you've done it willingly. So God bless you. Hey, we're wrapping up this election day. There's a lot of good things happening. We're not going to know the results nationally for another couple days, for the tabulation of all the votes. So thank you.